It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when she walked in. No appointment, no phone call, just the quiet push of our dealership's glass door and the jingle of the chime above it. She looked like she'd just stepped out of a bus shelter. Wet sandals, frizzy hair tucked under a cheap scarf, and a canvas bag slung across her shoulder like it held the weight of her world. I glanced up from my desk and saw her hesitate at the entrance. She didn't look like our usual clientele. Not flashy. Not confident. Not the kind of person who walked in knowing exactly what they wanted. But then again, that's exactly why I stayed in this business. I like the unpredictable ones. The people who didn't walk in with power, but left with something that changed their lives. Before I could get up, Mitchell got to her first. He's one of my longest-standing salesmen, efficient, aggressive, and, frankly, a little too good at reading wallets instead of people. I watched him paste on that patronizing smile he reserves for browsers, who he thinks won't pass the credit check. "Hi there," he said, voice syrupy. "Looking for someone?" The woman looked around nervously and then said softly, I wanted to ask about buying a car." Her voice was calm, but cautious, like she'd been told no too many times in too many different ways. Mitchell chuckled. I saw it from across the floor. Not loudly, just a short puff of air through his nose. But I caught it. And so did she. "Sure," he said. "Do you have a trade-in? Or are we financing?" There it was. The pause before financing. That pause you use when you think someone's credit report will come back with more red flags than a war zone. She stood her ground, even though her fingers curled tight around the strap of her bag. "I don't have credit," she said, lifting her chin. "None?" Mitchell asked, eyebrows practically flying off his face. "None," she confirmed. Mitchell forced another smile. "Okay, well let me grab you some brochures for our leasing options. But honestly, without credit." That's when I stood up. Because I saw something in her eyes. Not embarrassment. Not shame. Something closer to defiance. I walked over and interrupted the conversation. "Hi, I'm Noah. I own the place. Why don't you come talk to me?" She followed me to my desk, and Mitchell threw me a smirk like I was about to waste my time. I didn't care. I made us both a coffee from the machine behind me and offered it without a word. She took it but didn't drink. "I'm guessing this isn't your first stop today," I said. "No," she said. "Any luck?" She shook her head. "Mind if I ask your name?" "Alma," she said. "Nice to meet you, Alma." She looked at me, like she was trying to figure out if I was about to say something kind or condescending. So I asked the one question nobody else had. "What kind of car are you looking for?" Her answer surprised me. "I want the 2022 Lexus RX." That wasn't a starter car. It wasn't even modest. It was luxury. Top tier. Most people with perfect credit still hesitated before taking the plunge. I raised my eyebrows, but didn't laugh. I didn't even blink. "All right," I said. "Let me ask the obvious. Why no credit?" She looked away for a moment, then met my eyes again. "I paid for everything in cash my whole life. I was raised to never owe anyone anything." I leaned back. That alone didn't surprise me. What surprised me was how clear she was when she said it. Like it wasn't just a belief, it was a survival tactic. "I assume you've been turned down at other dealerships?" "5 this week," she said. All said the same thing. "No credit, no deal." "But you didn't give up." "No," she said, voice steady. "I just needed to find someone willing to listen." I exhaled slowly. This woman didn't want a favor. She wanted a chance. "I can get the car," I told her. "But you'll need a credit history to finance, especially for a luxury model. I can't change that system." "I'm not asking you to," she said. She unzipped her canvas bag. And that's when everything changed. She pulled out a thick envelope. No fanfare, no smug grin. Just placed it gently on the desk. I opened it and counted. 20 stacks of $100 bills. Neatly bundled. Wrapped with paper bands. My heart skipped. "That's $48,000, she said. "I want to pay full price. No haggling. No negotiation, but only if you treat me like any other buyer from this moment on." My hands went cold. Not because of the money, because of what it meant. I'd just watched one of my best salesmen laugh at a customer who had more cash in hand than most people ever see in their life. And I knew I was standing at a crossroads of ethics, of perception, of business. "Done," I said, and shook her hand. But that's not where this story ends. Because that day set off a chain of events I never saw coming. A story about secrets, assumptions, and the kind of truth you only find when you stop looking at appearances and start listening. After Alma left, Lexus RX reserved in her name and receipt issued, I walked into the break room and found Mitchell making jokes with two of the other sales reps. "Guy's a saint," Mitchell said, rolling his eyes. "She probably scrounged that cash from GoFundMe." The others chuckled, sipping their coffees like it was just another Thursday. "Did you see that bag?" another said. "She looked like she'd been camping in a bus terminal." I stood in the doorway, watching them. Not saying a word, just listening. Then I cleared my throat. Mitchell turned, startled. His grin dropped a notch. "Meeting in my office. Now." 5 minutes later, they were seated across from me, looking suddenly very sober. "I don't care what you think about a customer," I said. "But the second you treat someone like they don't belong here based on how they look, you're done." "Come on, Noah," Mitchell said, voice rising. "She had no credit." "That's a red flag." "Yeah, and she had $48,000 in cash, neatly stacked. Verified. No red flag there?" He shut his mouth. I leaned forward. "You think that woman's broke? Because she doesn't play by the rules of your little credit score religion? Let me ask you something. What if that money came from a life she built without owing anyone?" They didn't answer. Because they didn't know what to say. "Final warning," I said. "This place isn't just about selling cars, it's about listening. Understanding. If you can't do that, you can't be here." When they left, I sat at my desk and opened her file again. No loan. No cosigner. No phone number. Just a handwritten note that said, "Deliver to 617 Carter Lane. Call before arrival. Do not contact before Saturday." It felt odd. Almost too neat. Like she knew exactly how she wanted this to go. I pulled out my phone and typed the address into Maps. It was on the outskirts of town, near the old industrial district where warehouses had been converted into lofts and art spaces. Nothing about that part of town screamed, "luxury buyer," but something told me she wasn't just another rags to riches trope. Saturday came. My driver took the Lexus to the address. When he got back, he looked pale. "You won't believe this," he said, still holding the delivery confirmation form. "What?" "That address. It's not an apartment. It's a church." I blinked. "A church?" "Yeah. One of those converted warehouse sanctuaries. Big steel building, but classy. It had stained glass imported into the upper windows, security cameras, the works. She bought a car and had it delivered to a church." He nodded. "She met me outside, wearing the same scarf. She signed the form, smiled, and drove off like it was the most normal thing in the world. I couldn't let it go. There was something about her calm, her precision. I started digging. Not illegally, just observantly. I asked around. I checked county records. What I found didn't answer any questions. It raised more. The building on Carter Lane had been purchased 7 years ago by a nonprofit called House of Restoration. Founder? Alma B. Moreno. And that wasn't all. She was listed on several property deeds. Small homes, mostly, spread across the poorer parts of town. Many of them had transferred title from her to something called Living Mercy Initiative. And none had mortgages. Not one. I stared at the screen, stunned. This woman with no credit apparently owned or helped finance multiple properties outright. No loans, no banks, all cash. That's when I realized Alma wasn't poor. She was strategic. And I hadn't sold her a car, she had tested me. But for what? I picked up the phone and dialed the number she'd left for Saturday delivery. It rang twice. Then a calm voice answered. "This is Alma." "It's Noah," I said, "from the dealership." Silence. Then, "Did something go wrong with the delivery?" "No, not at all. It went perfectly. I just wanted to ask you something." "I'm listening," she said, her tone as clear and collected as it was the day we met. "Why did you come to my dealership?" She paused. Then gave a soft laugh. "I asked around, about the owners in this city. I heard a few stories. Most were predictable." "And mine?" "Someone told me you fired your top seller last year for mocking a disabled veteran." I blinked. I had. It hadn't made headlines, but the story had floated around quietly. "That's why I came," she said. "I wanted to see if it was true. If you were still that kind of man." A knot formed in my chest. So, the car? Oh, I needed the car, she said. But I could have gone anywhere. I chose to go where I'd find the truth. I sat in silence. Most people, she continued, only pretend to care until it costs them something. You didn't pretend. You listened. And that means more than you know. Before I could speak, she added, by the way, you might want to check your inbox in the morning. Then she hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone like it had just dropped a secret from another world. And the next morning, there was an email waiting. Subject line: thank you. I believe in what you're building. Attached? A scanned letter. From Alma. And at the bottom: I'd like to purchase 2 more vehicles. Anonymous donation. 1 for a woman rebuilding after abuse. 1 for a young man aging out of foster care. I read her message 3 times. I wasn't sure what stunned me more, that she was gifting 2 full-price vehicles to strangers, or that she trusted me to be the one to make it happen. No names. No requests for photos. No PR stunt. Just 1 for a woman rebuilding after abuse. 1 for a young man aging out of foster care. And then, let your team choose. I trust your instincts. Quiet kindness matters more than loud charity. I sat back in my chair, stunned. I had no words. But I did have one thought pounding in my head. This woman isn't just giving away cars. She's testing hearts. I walked into the showroom like I was floating. Mitchell saw me, gave a smug nod, and turned back to a customer. He still didn't know. Didn't know he'd laughed at someone doing more good in a single purchase than he had in his entire career. That night, I stayed late. I pulled up our pending inquiries. People who'd filled out forms but hadn't been approved. It didn't take long to find them. Karen T., early 30s. Minimal work history. Domestic violence shelter listed as her current address. Dante R. Just turned 18. No credit. No family. Still using the high school's email system. I called them both the next morning. Karen didn't believe me. She hung up the first time. I called back. Please, I said. I'm not selling you anything. I'm calling because someone paid in full for a car, with you in mind. Why me? Because someone believes your story isn't over, and they want to give you a safer chapter. She cried. No words. Just quiet sobs on the other end of the line. Dante was even more guarded. Is this a prank? No. I didn't win anything. You didn't need to. Someone saw your situation and wanted to help. You're saying I just get a car? Yes, with your name on the paperwork, no loan, no catch. Silence. Then, can I call you back? Of course. He called back 2 hours later and said, I've never owned anything. Not even my own room. I don't know what to do with this. You start by driving forward, I said. We set up the deliveries for the weekend. I sent Alma the invoice, and the money hit our account less than 24 hours later. No hesitation, no signature needed. It was done. I wanted to meet her again, to say thank you. But she was gone. No trace, no answer when I texted a short message of appreciation. Just quiet. And something about that felt right. She wasn't doing this for praise, she was building something bigger. I just didn't know how much bigger. Until one of my part-time staff, Yemi, came to me the following Monday with a question. Boss, did a woman named Alma come in last week? I nodded. Yemi's eyes widened. She helped my mom. 2 years ago. What do you mean? Yemi looked around, lowered his voice. My mom had a bad situation, left our dad. No place to go. Someone connected her to this woman named Alma. She gave us a place to stay. Helped mom find a job. Never asked for a dime. I stared at him. And you're just telling me this now? I didn't know it was her until I saw her delivery name in the schedule. He paused. Is she like rich? I shook my head. No, she's something more powerful. She's deliberate. That night, I started digging again. This time, deeper. I found whispers online. Blog posts with no author, comments from grateful people, single moms, refugees, youth with no one to turn to. They all used different names, but the same phrase kept appearing. The woman with the scarf. She showed up, helped quietly, and left. No press, no followers. Just a ripple of change moving quietly through our city. And now she'd walk through my doors. To test me. To see if I was just another man looking at credit scores and suit jackets. Or if I saw people. And the part that haunted me most? I almost failed. If I hadn't been watching Mitchell. If I'd been too buried in reports. If I'd dismissed her like the others had. I would have missed the most important moment of my entire career. The next weekend, I met Karen in the lot. We handed her the keys to a used Toyota Camry, solid, safe, well kept. She broke down crying in front of the entire staff. Her daughter was with her, 8 years old, tiny hands clutching her leg. The girl looked up at the car and whispered, "Mom, we have a car. We don't have to take the bus anymore." Dante got his on Sunday. He walked around the small SUV we'd prepared for him 3 times, touching it like it might disappear. He didn't smile at first, just nodded quietly. Then he looked at me and said, "I'm gonna drive to college. I wasn't gonna go. But now I can." I told the staff not to say a word about who paid. This wasn't about us. But I saw the shift in their eyes, especially Mitchell's. He watched both handovers in silence. No jokes this time. And when I returned to my office, he was waiting. "Can I talk to you?" I nodded. He stepped inside and closed the door. "I was wrong," he said. "About Alma. About everything. I made a judgment call, and I laughed at someone who's done more for this city than I ever will. I didn't say anything. I wanted to see where this went." "Do you think she'd ever talk to me?" he asked. "I want to apologize." "I doubt it," I said. He looked down. "But maybe," I added, "you can start by apologizing to every other person who walks in here, especially the ones you assume can't buy." It had been a month since Alma walked into my dealership. Since then, our business hadn't just shifted, it had evolved. Something subtle but powerful had taken hold of the staff. They were listening more, asking better questions, paying closer attention to the quiet customers, the ones who didn't shout or flaunt or demand. Mitchell, too, had changed. He no longer laughed at anyone. In fact, I caught him offering to refill a customer's coffee without a word, just a nod of respect. That alone told me something had landed inside him, something that Alma had sparked, without ever needing to raise her voice. But then, on an unassuming Wednesday morning, a man in a charcoal jacket walked into the dealership asking for me. He looked serious. Not angry. Focused. Like someone used to making decisions with weight. I introduced myself and invited him into my office. "I'm Pastor Renner," he said. "I run a community center across from the Carter Lane Church." I nodded slowly. He placed a folded newspaper clipping on my desk. It was a story from 5 years ago. No photo. Just a title. "Anonymous Benefactor Rescues Shelter from Foreclosure." The article described how, with just days left, a mysterious donor had paid off the mortgage for one of the largest women's shelters in the city. The staff never knew her name, only that she wore a scarf, and left a note that read, "Nobody should lose their refuge because of someone else's sins." "You know this was her, right?" he asked. "Yes," I said quietly. "I thought so," he nodded. "She used to visit my center, never announced. Just drop things off. Clothes, food, cash in envelopes. She even fixed the plumbing once, with her own tools." I raised an eyebrow. "She fixed the plumbing?" He smiled. "She's not who you think. That woman knows her way around everything. Finance, construction, trauma counseling. But she never stays long enough for thanks." "What does she want?" I asked, half to myself. The pastor answered anyway. "She wants what we all say we want, but she acts on it. A better world, one story at a time." He reached into his jacket again and handed me a plain, sealed envelope. "I was told to deliver this to you, if I ever found out you'd met her." I opened it after he left. Inside was a handwritten note. "Noah, by now you've seen a little more than most, but the work has barely started. This city is full of people who look invisible, until someone reminds them they're not. You're in a rare position to be that reminder. Use what you have, build what matters. There are 3 more names I'd like you to consider. No money this time, only trust." 3 names were listed on the back. No context, no ages, just names. Grace M. Tariq H. Melinda. No last name given. I stared at the list. No instructions. No map. No clues. And yet, I felt a weight in my hand heavier than all the cash she'd ever dropped on my desk. I decided to find them. Grace M. was first. A few phone calls and a tip from one of my part-timers led me to a high school office. She was a janitor. Late 50s. Quiet, kept to herself. One of the teachers told me she took on extra shifts to pay for her son's medical bills and still walked to work because her old car had died the year before. I went to the school, found her cleaning a hallway with a mop and bucket. I introduced myself. "I'm not selling anything," I promised. I just wanted to ask, do you need a car? She blinked at me. Hard. Like I'd spoken in another language. I what? She said. A vehicle. Something reliable. No payments. No catch. Her mop slipped from her hand. I caught it. You don't have to say yes right now, I said gently. She sat down on the bench outside the classroom and whispered. My prayers don't usually get answered this fast. Tariq H. was next. He was a mechanic's apprentice at a dusty garage near the highway. I found him under the hood of a beat-up Ford. He was skeptical at first, but when I mentioned Alma, just her name, he froze, then smiled. She ever tell you what she used to do? No, I said. She used to fix engines better than the guys here. That woman knows torque ratios like a textbook. I stared. He chuckled. She told me once, never wait for the world to recognize your worth, just make sure it exists. I've been trying to live by that ever since. I handed him the keys to a used truck that had come in just last week. He hugged me. Not a bro hug. A full, trembling, thank you for seeing me kind of hug. Melinda was the hardest. She had no last name listed, and no one seemed to know who she was. But then one of my service team, Petra, pulled me aside. I think I know her, she said. There's a woman who sleeps near the bus depot. Always has a plastic bag of books with her. Talks to herself sometimes. But I've heard her mention the name Alma. More than once. We went together. It took us 2 evenings. But on the third, we found her. Thin. Worn. Wrapped in layers of mismatched sweaters, but her eyes, sharp, alive. Did Alma send you? She asked before I even opened my mouth. Yes, I said. She said you might. We didn't give her a car right away. We gave her a ride, a shower, a room for the night. The car came later, when she said she was ready. A used hatchback. Clean. Safe. And in the glove box, I left a copy of The Alchemist, one of the books I'd seen her clutching near the station. Inside, I wrote, You were always meant to go far. Now you can drive there. 3 names, 3 lives, no spotlight, no selfies, just quiet revolutions. And each one, whether they knew it or not, tied to a woman who had walked into my dealership, wearing a scarf and carrying truth in a canvas bag. I couldn't sleep. Not after the third name, not after seeing Melinda, barefoot, bruised by the world, but still holding on to stories in plastic bags like they were currency. How many more were there? How many people had Alma quietly saved? And, more disturbingly, how many had we ignored? That question haunted me more than anything. For weeks I kept searching for a trace of her. I checked news archives, non-profit boards, volunteer lists, nothing. She left fewer fingerprints than smoke. And then, one night, after closing, I found a package waiting at my office door. No return address, just my name. Inside was a worn leather notebook and a folded letter. Noah. I didn't intend to come to your dealership that day. I'd been turned away by 4 others. I was tired, ready to give up. But something told me to try one last place. What I saw confirmed something I've believed for years. There are people in this world who build bridges, and people who guard gates. You're a bridge, even if you don't always realize it. This notebook contains stories I haven't shared with anyone. If you're reading this, it means I trust you to decide what to do with them. But don't look for me. That chapter is closed. Now it's your turn to keep writing. A store to my hands trembled as I opened the notebook. Page after page, written in clean, steady handwriting, told stories. A woman fleeing a violent husband with 2 children and no shoes. A teenager kicked out for coming out, who Alma found sleeping behind a laundromat. A retired teacher who lost his home to a reverse mortgage scam and was living in his car when she met him. But one entry stopped me cold. It was marked only by a date, 12 years ago, and a single line of text. The day I buried my son. There were no other details. No name, no age. Just that. The pain between those lines, it pulsed. Like something still alive under the surface. That's when I understood something I hadn't before. Alma's giving wasn't born from privilege. It was born from loss. From something so profound, so earth-shattering, that she had no choice but to become the thing she never found when she needed it most. A lifeline. A quiet savior. A second chance. Walking. And the dealership? It had become her final test, not of wealth or kindness, but of values. The next morning, I stood in front of my team. They didn't know what I was holding. They didn't need to. But they listened as I spoke. "We've been given a gift," I said. "Not money. Not fame. Perspective." I looked around the room, catching every eye. We get people at their most vulnerable when their dignity is paper thin. We can either add to their fear or hand them a rope. No one spoke. Even Mitchell looked down, hands clasped tightly. This place used to be about margins, quotas, numbers on a whiteboard. And don't get me wrong, those things matter, but not more than people. I held up the notebook. This is our new mission. And from that day forward, things changed. We started something called the Alma List. Not a charity, not a brand, just a quiet initiative. Every month, we picked one customer who needed more than a deal, and we gave it. A warranty extension, a tank of gas, a car at cost. Sometimes, just a chair and a conversation. It wasn't loud, it wasn't perfect, but it was honest. 3 months later, a woman walked in carrying a bakery box. Her hands were trembling. She asked for me at the front desk. I met her with a smile and asked if I could help. She set the box on my desk and said, "I used to be the woman with the bruises, the one who got the Camry." I blinked. It was Karen. Only now she looked alive, brighter. She was working 2 jobs, had her own apartment, her daughter was in school and thriving. "I brought you something," she said, sliding the box toward me. "I've started a home business. Cookies, cupcakes, whatever people need to make a hard day sweeter." I opened the box. Inside, perfectly frosted cupcakes, with a message piped in careful pink icing. For the man who didn't laugh. I didn't cry in front of her, but I did sit at my desk for 10 minutes after she left, staring at that message until it blurred. And I realized. That was Alma's impact. Not just in dollars, but in echoes. In the way people stood taller because someone had once looked past their broken shoes and saw potential. That night, I reopened the notebook, and I found one more page I hadn't noticed before, folded tightly near the back. In smaller handwriting, almost hidden. It read, "If you ever lose faith in what this work is for, go back to where it began." There was an address, a rural road just outside city limits. No name, no explanation. But something told me it mattered. I had to go. Some stories leave behind noise, others leave behind change. Alma's visit to my dealership didn't just sell cars, it reshaped hearts, including mine. And in a world where appearances deceive, her quiet strength taught us what truly matters. If stories like this move you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more powerful moments, hidden heroes, and twists that stay with you long after the credits roll. The road was gravel, barely maintained. Trees flanked each side, bending toward the center like they were trying to keep a secret buried beneath the branches. I drove slowly. No music. Just the crunch of tires and the thud of my heart. The address Alma left brought me to a clearing. A small house sat at the center, modest, wooden, and quiet. The kind of place that felt like it held memories in every beam. I parked and stepped out. There was no gate, no sign. Only a mailbox, crooked, with the numbers 118 barely hanging on. I wasn't sure what I expected to find. But what I didn't expect was the woman sitting on the porch, a cup of tea in one hand, and a book in the other. She looked up, smiled like she'd been expecting me all along. "Hello, Noah." It was Alma. No scarf, no bag, just her. Still. Stillness, like a lake before dawn. "I didn't think I'd see you again," I said. She gestured to the chair beside her. "You were never not meant to come." I sat. The breeze moved through the trees, rustling the silence between us. "This place," I said softly. She nodded. "It was my son's, where he took his first steps, built his first snowman, where I held him last." A pause. Then, "He was killed by someone who shouldn't have had a second chance." My breath caught. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. She nodded, eyes on the distance. "That grief could have eaten me alive." And for a time, it did. But then I realized something. She turned to me. You can't outrun sorrow, but you can shape what it leaves behind. I didn't know what to say, so I let the quiet speak for me. I sold everything I had, she continued. My home, my jewelry, even my car. I lived in shelters for a while. Not because I had to, but because I needed to understand what it felt like to be invisible. And then? I asked. I started building, she said. One woman, one man, one child at a time. No boards, no grants, just me, my hands, and what little money people didn't ask questions about. Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. I didn't want fame or recognition. I just wanted to pass it on. And the dealership? I asked. Was the first place I'd been in a long time where someone saw me. Not my bag, not my clothes, me. I swallowed hard. And Mitchell? She smirked. He needed to see himself in a mirror. You gave him that chance. We sat there as the sun dropped lower. I'm leaving soon, she said. Where? Somewhere else. New town. New names. Same work. Why tell me all this? Because you'll keep it going. I know you will. You already have. A flock of birds burst from the trees, lifting the stillness with the sound of wings. She handed me a box. Plain, wooden, sealed with a single piece of twine. Inside were car keys, 2 sets, and a small note. One for the mother of 5 who walks 6 miles to work. One for the man cleaning hospital floors at night while studying for his GED. How do you keep finding them? I asked. She smiled. Because I was all of them. We stood. She hugged me, not tightly, not formally, but like someone transferring something invisible between souls. A legacy. A torch. And then, just like that, I left. I never saw her again. But I saw her in others. In the smile of the mother who got that van. In the tears of the janitor who found keys waiting on his locker. In the dozens of stories that unfolded afterward. Quiet, powerful, full of second chances. Her name faded from the public eye. But in our dealership, the Alma list became more than a mission. It became our compass. We stopped measuring value in credit scores and started measuring it in courage, persistence, and quiet resilience. We sold cars. But more than that, we gave dignity. Not to everyone. Just to the ones most people overlooked. And that? Fachla Helen down. That made all the difference. Some stories leave behind noise. Others leave behind change. Alma's visit to my dealership didn't just sell cars. It reshaped hearts, including mine. And in a world where appearances deceive, her quiet strength taught us what truly matters. If stories like this move you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more powerful moments, hidden heroes, and twists that stay with you long after the credits roll.